Welcome to the very first instalment of Westenders. I'm outside the Palace Theatre in the heart of London's West End, home to the smash hit musical Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. The show the critics said put the glory into Gloria and the gay into Gaynor. Earlier I caught up with two very important members of the company to find out how their amateur roots shaped their professional careers. John, lovely to meet you. So, Priscilla, you play Frank and you're also first cover Bernadette. So tell us more about your role.
Well, Priscilla is a musical about three drag queens on a journey through the outback of Australia. And they encounter various people throughout that journey. They start off in Sydney and they get further and further into the Australian outback. And where my character meets those drag queens is in a town called Kalburgi, which is a small mining town in the extreme middle of nowhere in Australia. And when Frank meets Felicia, one of the youngest drag queens, she's in complete drag and he's never seen a drag queen before, so he assumes he's a woman. And then suddenly something happens which makes Frank realize this is a man, and then violence and hilarity eventually ensue.
Finally, it happens to me, right in front of my face, and I just cannot hide it. So how did you go about landing the role?
Well, initially, everyone in London was auditioning for Priscilla. When it was first out, the cattle calls were out the door. I arrived for an audition and it was just a sea of people, just all boys, all a similar height, a similar look, a similar background, similar CVs. And everyone I knew who was in the business was auditioning for Priscilla. But so we had our initial dance call, which is the usual for a big musical. So you start off and they'll do a cut. So you do your standard dance audition and then they'll cut a few people, or they might cut a lot of people. Then you'll be called back on a separate day or maybe later on that day to sing. And that day, I think it was a separate call. I ended up doing 7 separate auditions for Priscilla.
Wow.
We'd done all the routines for the Australian creative team. So we went into this room and there was a wall full of wigs, ball gowns and heels, and they did us all up in full makeup and full drag, and we had to go in and perform that for the audition panel, which is unheard of in a musical.
That's
but
amazing.
We had to arrive in as ladies.
Your role is obviously crucial. As a dresser, you're responsible for hundreds of sparkling, fabulous costumes. What exactly is it that you do?
Well, I look after Oliver Thornton, and he plays Adam/Felicia, and he's got about 21 costume changes, and I'm responsible for setting all the costumes, pre-setting them in the really particular areas where because he only has about sort of 30 seconds for a lot of the changes. Actually facilitating, helping him with the changes, and then clearing everything, hanging it all up, looking for repairs, doing all of that throughout the show. And it's on a show that big, it's quite a full-on job. So yeah.
Okay, so it's showtime. You're backstage. There are hundreds of costumes. Where on earth do you start?
I mean, to start with, if you're dressing in a group of ensemble, then it's much more about literally having everything there, the right place, right time. If you're dressing a solo person, a star, or 1 or 2 lead people, then it's much more. Obviously, all that's got to happen as well, but then you become much more of a confident, it's just the two of you in a dressing room. You get to know someone really closely, so there's much more of a bond. And on some shows, I dressed Patti LuPone on a second show, Masterclass. She was on stage for the entire show, had 1 costume. I made lots of cups of tea for her, things like that, because it's like, what else do you do? But other shows, it's so busy, you're just there to stop them from having to worry.
So let's go back to the beginning. Tell us about your experiences of Amdram.
I spent years in amateur dramatics back in Limerick, where I'm from. Well, I started off in a stage school, and then the stage school was affiliated with this musical society. It was the Sicilian Musical Society in Limerick. And we did My Fair Lady, Jesus Christ Superstar. I did some stuff in Dublin with the Rathmines and Rathgar Musical Society, Oklahoma, Me and My Girl.
I was in 2 groups, World of Rock Music Society, known as Worms.
That sounds pretty
and
funky.
the Chelmsford young generation society, so they were Young Gen. And Young Gen have had quite a few reunions, like 20 years on, 25 years on, and it's been brilliant to go back. Brilliant to catch up with the people. Everyone, you know, you just fall back into place like you always did. No airs and graces. I trained with lots of people who became quite successful actors. There was a guy younger than me, I've only met him at the reunions, is now one of the leads in True Blood.
I just loved every minute of Amdram. I just had the time of my life. And I think for a lot of people, that's where the seed is sown. You know, that's where you get a taste of it and you start where, not to use a cliche, but where you get the bug. You know, because how else are you going to know that that's what you want to do? And then suddenly to be in that atmosphere with people who are so passionate about it that you start to click that, yeah, this is what I want to do.
And where did you go from there then?
Well, after I finished secondary school, I did a degree in a different subject in Dublin, but it wasn't until I'd actually finished university that I realised this was what I wanted to do, because I was continuing to do amateur dramatics in Dublin, but it got to the point where it wasn't just something. I know a lot of people do it as a hobby or a sideline, and then they're happy with their day job. I wasn't happy with the rest of it. All I wanted to do was that. So I auditioned for a London college, Lane Theatre Arts, and got in and did my 3 years there, and I haven't stopped working since.
Well, I did a degree in fashion design. Didn't know what to do, and someone told me there was a job going on Starlight Express. And I just had an interview for that, and because at college we had done fashion shows, we'd done some quick changes, I got the job, thought I'd do it for a couple of weeks until I decided what I really wanted to do with my life, and 27 years later I'm still doing it. I love it. So yeah, it's good fun.
So talk us through your journey from Starlight to Priscilla and where you went in between.
Well, quite a few places. After Starlight, I did Les Mis when it first opened at the Palace 25 years ago, and that was dressing Alan Armstrong as Thénardier and some of the other ensemble boys. Did a show called Time, original cast of Follies with Stephen Sondheim's musical at the Shaftesbury Theatre. But recently I've dressed Lee Evans on The Producers, Sally Ann Triplet on Anything Goes, I dressed on Evita, I dressed on Lord of the Rings, which was a crazy big show to do. I dressed on Sunset Boulevard when it first opened, American divas like Patti LuPone and Betty Buckley and then Elaine Page. Dressed the lead boy on Our House, which was 28 costume changes a show. He only left, some of those were only about 7 or 8 seconds long. That was really, really tough work. But yes, now I'm on Priscilla.
Finally, it's happened to me right in front of my face. My feelings can't say it. Finally, it's happened to me right in front of my face. And I just can't.
So how exactly would you say that Amdram prepared you for the West End?
You know, you really learn to work as a team when you do amateur stuff. Everyone has to pull together, especially when you haven't massively got the huge budgets or, you know, a full department of, you know, people to sort out the props and stuff. You know, everyone mucks in, everyone does a little bit, you know, and I think that really prepares you for working as a team. A wardrobe team, there's the wigs team, there's the crew, there's so many other people backstage, all the stage management, and you all have your own department. You have to work well together, but then you have to work with all the other departments as well, and together you make a big unit that puts a show on.
And are there any personal highlights or shows that stuck out in your memory?
Rehearsals. I always preferred the rehearsals to the actual performances. That's probably maybe why I ended up working backstage than on stage. But just laughing. I remember laughing so much all the time. Memories, yeah. Definitely rehearsals in my memory.
I loved Me and My Girl. I loved that show so much, and it's got such heart to it, and it's such a simple story really, but I got such a kick out of doing it because it was actually my first, what I considered to be a big show in Dublin. We had professionals in playing the leads, and we were amateurs in the ensemble. I'll never forget meeting professional actors in real life for the first time, because in Ireland, people don't, not that's to generalise, but there's less of a sense of it being a profession. It's something that you see on the TV, it's a million miles away. Whereas suddenly to see real professional West End actors in the flesh just suddenly made it a bit more tangible and made the West End seem that bit more reachable.
And have you been back to visit your group since you hit the big time?
Yes, I have. And they're great, they're fantastic, there's such talent in amateur dramatics. But I love when you see the 1 or 2 people who you know have that urge to go on and do something more. And it's possible, that's the thing, everybody starts somewhere, so...
So Mari, you've obviously worked extensively in amateur theatre and in the West End. Are there any tips that you'd like to share with our stage talkers?
I mean, certainly when I did amateur stuff, I mean, you might have had you were always responsible for your own costumes and stuff, and I think that you learn to appreciate how to look after things. You know, you've got to make them last, even if it's only a 3-day run or a whole week's run or something. You've got to look after things, and I think you certainly, when you get to work with really expensive costumes, Sunset Boulevard, we had costumes that, this is back in '93, were £100 a metre. You know, you learn to put that on a hanger properly. You know, you really have to look after these things and make sure you don't lose anything. Nothing gets dropped, nothing gets crushed, nothing gets broken. You know, you need to learn to care. I think you do that a lot when you're doing amateur stuff.
I would personally advise anybody starting off to get solid training in ballet, jazz and tap, and their drama and their singing and everything, the whole thing that goes together to make you a true professional.
So where do you see yourself going next? Are there any particular roles that you've got your eye on?
I don't know any. It's strange. My big dream was to be in Chicago, and I did that about 2 years ago. And after that, I'm just happy to be in theatre now. I mean, I don't have any massive dream role. I think my dream is to stay in theatre and to keep working and to keep doing what I love. And over our stage door at the Palace, it says, through these doors, I'm paraphrasing now, but it says, through these doors, the greatest artists in the world have passed and will pass through. And to go through that every day into work is such an incredible feeling.
And you're part of it. Brilliant. John, thank you very much for your time and good luck with the rest of Priscilla.
Thanks very much.
Priscilla, when I knew it was coming, obviously the costumes are extraordinary even. The same designer who did the film, and they won the Oscar for it, so, you know, and I thought they were going to improve on those costumes, and so they've been amazing to work with. Who knows what's coming up in the future? Who knows?
Well, Mari, it's been lovely to meet you and good luck with Priscilla.
Thank you very much.
Well, that's it from Priscilla. Join us next time for more Westenders.